Welcome back. Welcome to Sincerely Stand, where we talk about things that are important to you. Um, today's letter um, is interesting, and it's interesting because it strikes home with me directly, and it's the situation in a lot of relationships these days here in the United States, and it's interracial relationship. This young lady, excuse me, she didn't want to expose her name, but she did title her letter, and it's "Unhealthy Conversations Are Ruining My Interracial Relationship." Um, it starts like this. I'll read it, and then we'll get into it. Dear Stan, I can't expose my name because I don't want that I wrote in to get out. I'm writing to you because a friend directed me to your site. She said the advice you give sounds fair. When I read this, I was bowled over. That someone would think something that I had to say was fair. So thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Um, this situation has me really confused. I'll try to explain. I'm a 20-year-old Caucasian woman. I've been in a relationship with a 33-year-old black man for just under 2 years. We get along great together as a couple, except there seems to be some perspective differences that my guy and I have that I think are based on racial experiences. For instance, he constantly talks about how his people are under entirely different standards than mine. Even though I agree that it's obvious that black people are treated much more fairly than whites, I think the personal constitution is a way to overcome adversity. What I try to tell him is that it seems that some black people, especially men, blame too much on the white man rather than pulling themselves up by the bootstraps to individually overcome adversity. Other people's opinions are becoming a big factor too. My family is concerned that our different backgrounds may be too much to overcome. My friends like my boyfriend a lot, but they're concerned that our perspective differences might be too much to overcome as well. My friend is educated, so almost everywhere we go, he starts educated racial issue conversations that sometimes make people feel uncomfortable. I don't mind him expressing how he feels about racial issues. I think there's a time and a place for anything. Certainly not my Christmas party where people that I certainly not my Christmas party with people that I have to work with. He's from the inner city. I was raised in the upper middle class suburbs, so I realize and accept we have cultural differences. I just want to know if you think that what I'm experiencing is something we can overcome. Any advice is welcome. Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. Um, and secondly, like I said, this is something that's dear to me because my daughter is what people could consider biracial. Her mom is Puerto Rican, and of course I'm black. So I've had to deal with some situations, not this in particular, but situations regarding interracial relationships and so forth and so on from my daughter's experiences. So I just want to applaud you for the courage to write in. Um, and I'm going to try to give you advice based on some of what things that I've experienced and just some of what science says about social relationships. As we all know, in and of themselves, social relationships can be refreshing. We get different backgrounds, ethnic perspectives, we get different racial perspectives, we get different religious perspectives. And if this is lived out, this can be a spice of life. However, um, considering the climate of today, the documented climate of the racial inequalities and opposing philosophies politically and otherwise, um, this interracial relationship can be a daunting endeavor. So it requires some courageousness for sure. There are many different things to consider in an interracial relationship, and some of the things that I documented while I was making notes on your letter was that um, I think it's very important to know that your differences. You said he constantly talks about his people. It's important to become emotionally connected with your partner and learn to share his sensibilities and concerns. Um, this is true for any relationship, but certainly true for interracial couples because group, racial group may have, or ethnic group may have experienced some hardships that the other can't identify with or hasn't had to face, like racism, for instance, discriminations of certain types. We've all been discriminated against, but we're talking racially here. Just racial discriminations, racial excessive force, and against blacks, police brutality, so to speak. So you guys have to be open and honest with each other. If you don't understand, then you just don't understand where he's coming from. If you don't have those experiences, I'll tell you once, we were at church, in the inner city church, and my daughter and I, who lived in the suburbs with her mom, that's when she was brought down here. She was brought to the suburbs. She remained in the suburbs after my divorce. And the area that we lived in was predominantly white. So my daughter's firsthand experiences, most intimate experiences, have been with the white children. So there was an occasion where when we were at this particular church, they were talking about inner city things, and the woman that was teaching these youth, it was a youth class, I forget what it was about, but she was using an example of the things that inner city kids have to go through and to be in the city, the pressures that the kids have. And she was saying, like, you know what I mean when the boys are feeling on you, or you know what I mean when their pants are sagging, you know what I mean, and you know what I mean. And she came over to my daughter and she says, you know what I mean, and my daughter just looked at her with a blank look on her face. Sierra did. And I spoke up for her and said she has never had those experiences, so she doesn't know anything about that. So you guys have to be open and honest. If you don't know about those experiences, his experiences, what he's experiences, or he doesn't understand your experiences, things that you may be experiencing, it's just not his experiences, it would be yours as well. Then you guys need to be open and honest, and at least, if you don't understand at this point, be empathetic. And then, maybe ask how I can become educated, how you can become educated about, learn something about African American history so that you can support your guys' perspectives, even though you don't have, this kind of firsthand information with these things. I find the best way to educate, the best way is to be empathetic, is to educate ourselves about a certain situation, and then take on like an intentional, objective viewpoint and ask yourself if you would want to experience what the other person is experiencing or relaying that they have experienced or their people are experiencing, whatever the case may be, and see if you would like it. So if you were to educate yourself about African American history truly and ask yourself, if the tables were turned and you were the enslaved and they were the slave master, would you like the way that they've been treated? Sometimes that can bring on the empathy too that will help us better work through these things. My second thought was like the first being to know your differences. There are differences, and you've expressed that, so I think you get that. Examine your motives. Now this is going to be a little sensitive, but I need to say this because of the reasons that I do. Everybody doesn't have the best motives for anything. There's nothing, and I've already stated that, wrong with being in a relationship, interracial relationship. It's just important that we know our motives for entering in that type of relationship. Here's what I mean. For instance, we might want to reconsider if our relationship has come from a place of rebellion. And I know that a lot of young people, black and white, that have positive viewpoints, are advocates of social and racial justice, and their parents aren't, can be drawn to people of another race, heritage, religion for the simple fact of rebellion. And, being mad at your friends or your family that don't support Black Lives Matter is not like a reason enough to be, it's not a substantial enough reason to date outside of your race. The reasoning should always be based on the normal set of principles that we have when we consider a relationship, not some rogue type of rebellious motives that are based off of a disdain for another person, group, family member, whoever it may be, their position, but rather something that's pure from your heart. So just consider your motives. Not you specifically, I'm talking in general. I just know that, black men are known, for instance, just by virtue of being black, to face these types of stereotypes, such as they're automatically athletic or can sing or dance or possess some astounding sexual prowess. Stereotypes about physicalities, even if you believe these things to be true, are not enough of a reason to become involved in an intimate interracial relationship with somebody. That foundation just isn't strong enough. There needs to be more commonalities than differences. And again, I'm not accusing you of anything in my response. I'm talking in general. I'm just speaking in the general context of interracial relationships in general. So, my third was do and don't consider other people's opinions. And where I get that from is we need to always consider the source, the degree of the relationship between ourselves and the people that are giving us this advice. Depending upon who it is, it just might not hurt to consider their motives. There's haters everywhere. So, we need to carefully consider the source and the motives of the advice that someone may give us. That sounds a little deep, but if we just give it a little bit more thought than we normally do, then maybe we make better decisions based on, advice that we've been given. I just hate to see people take crazy advice or advice that was given out of bad motives. My fourth thought was consider the potential repercussions. Everyone wants a RORI, and that's my term for return on relational investment. That comes in many forms for many different people. They're what they consider their RORI. But for whatever the reason may be, consider if your relationship is more of a liability or an asset. If the scales weigh that the relationship is more of a liability, even if the liability is coming from how people, external forces are treating you, like if you're being prejudiced against at a job, is that relationship worth being prejudiced against? I'm not saying that it is, I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying, that we have to consider whether our relationships are a liability to us or an asset. You mentioned about the Christmas party, being alienated at work for inappropriately placed comments isn't a good RORI to me. That's something that would need to be dealt with ASAP, even if it wasn't a racial issue. If it was an issue that was inappropriate for the time, then it is something that needs to be dealt with if it's continuously happening. This is just my personal opinion. We have to consider how deeply this divides our family members. That's another consideration. I'm not suggesting that we succumb to the wishes of our family members for their lack of total approval for your relationship. I just think that I think that if we truly care for someone, if that person, over the course of some time, and there's some longevity and continuity and consistency, with this person treating you right, even though a family member or family members or friends or whatever may not like this person, a lot of times people can be turned over to change their opinion, because if they truly care about you, then they're going to want you to be happy. And so that may win them over. So I'm not suggesting that you would succumb to the pressures of your family. I'm suggesting that, or friends, I'm suggesting more that you stay constant and true to the relationship and work on that. And if you guys are truly a couple and are good for each other, people will see it and they'll come around. That's what I think. Another note that I made is you have to look at things that you have in common versus the things that you don't. This will clear up some smoke. More than anything, and I always have to make mention of this because this is my God. Remember that God is the one who created people, various sizes, shapes, races, ethnic groups, cultures, backgrounds. We're the ones to pervert the integration of this beautiful thing. So, um, because of we have this deeply challenged lack of love and care for one another. Um, you guys need to learn to strip away people's opinions and advice and criticism and etc. All of this, and you guys just take a close look at what you have in common as opposed to what your differences are. Look at, the foods that you like, arts that you like, religions that you can agree on, travel destinations, all of these things, style, dress style, level of professionalism, emotional stability, things like that. I could go on and on. Those are things that if you guys have those things in common, that's a good thing, because commonalities are right up there with trust in a relationship. If you guys have things in common that you enjoy doing, that's a good RORI in a relationship. So, um, again, it's bravo for writing in about something as sensitive as this. Um, I'd like to hear from you. If you wanted to, come back, you can look down below. You'll see how you can contact us through our social medias and our website. Get back in touch with us and let us know in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months how things are progressing or not progressing, and that's always good subject matter. That's good table talk. So we'd like to hear from you and see how things turned out for you. That's all I got today, guys. This is a situation that I suspect quite a few interracial couples may go through. I made a note that I would even suggest some support groups. There's some support groups out there that might be enlightening, and they would help you see that other people are having some of the same problems, and you guys can stick together and come up with solutions together, and even socialize together. So that would be something that I think that might help the situation as well. So as always, to my friends, my family, God loves you, and I do too. Bye.